The sentencing of Jason Serval on April 12, 2024 was unlike anything the world has ever witnessed. Chaos erupted in the courtroom after Serval was handed a 45-year sentence, far from the death penalty the victim's family had hoped for. And if you think it stopped at that, just watch out for what happened next. The nightmare that shattered a community. In the early morning hours of July 16, 2022, in the quiet mill town of Skowhegan, Maine, a peaceful community of about 8,000 residents nestled along the Kennebec River, something unspeakable happened that would forever change the trajectory of dozens of lives and eventually lead to one of the most explosive courtroom scenes ever captured on camera. What unfolded that summer morning wasn't just a tragedy, it was a manifestation of intimate partner violence pushed to its most lethal extreme, and the aftershocks would ripple through the justice system for years to come. 20-year-old Alice Allie Abbott was everything you'd hope to see in a young adult just beginning to find her way in the world. A recent high school graduate from Skowhegan High School, she worked part-time as a cashier at the local Hannaford supermarket, where colleagues remembered her as bubbly, fiercely independent, and always quick with a smile that lit up the store. Living with her parents, Alice Sr. and David Abbott, along with her two younger siblings, Allie had dreams of attending community college for early childhood education. Her hobbies included hiking nearby trails, scrolling TikTok for makeup tutorials, and being what friends later called the glue of our group, often mediating squabbles with her empathetic nature. But it was precisely this empathetic, caring nature that may have blinded Allie to the early warning signs in her relationship with Jason Serval. Serval, then just 19 years old, hailed from Boston, Massachusetts, approximately 250 miles south. Described in court documents as a high school dropout with no prior criminal record, Serval carried untreated mental health struggles, including diagnosed impulse control disorder and possible undiagnosed PTSD from a turbulent family environment marked by his parents' contentious divorce. The two had met online through mutual friends on Snapchat in early 2022, and what began as innocent flirtation during a spring break visit to Maine quickly evolved into something far more troubling. Court filings and family interviews revealed a relationship dynamic fraught with classic warning signs of coercive control. Serval's possessiveness manifested in frequent check-in texts, demanding to know Allie's location. Where are you? Who are you with? Combined with jealousy over her male co-workers and subtle isolation tactics, like discouraging her from group hangouts with friends. Allie confided in her older brother, Clifford C.J. Warren, about feeling smothered, once texting him words that would later haunt the family. He's sweet but intense. Says I'm his forever, but I just want space. By mid-June 2022, Allie made the brave decision to end the relationship, citing both the distance and his controlling behavior. But Serval responded not with acceptance, but with a barrage of desperate pleas and thinly veiled threats. Voicemails like, "If you're not mine, who will want you?" painted a chilling picture. Prosecutors would later argue that this rejection ignited a jealous rage further fueled by rumors, spread via social media, that Allie had begun seeing someone new. In the pre-dawn hours of that fateful Saturday, July 16, 2022, as temperatures hovered in the low 60s under a hazy summer sky, Jason Serval made a decision that would destroy multiple families forever. He drove overnight from Massachusetts to Maine, fueled by what he later described as rage texts and an obsessive need to confront Allie. Around 5:15 a.m., he arrived unannounced at the Abbott family property at 912 Canaan Road, a weathered ranch-style home where Allie had been staying to distance herself from the breakup. Inside, Allie wasn't alone. Nick Rice, a 25-year-old family friend from nearby Madison, had crashed on the couch after a late-night catch-up session. He would later recount that the group had been watching Netflix until about 2 a.m., with Allie retiring to her bedroom around midnight, completely unaware of the danger approaching. What happened next can only be described as calculated savagery. Serval forced entry through a side window near the kitchen, shattering the glass with a rock wrapped in his hoodie sleeve to muffle the noise. evidence of premeditation. Once inside, he immediately grabbed a 6-inch serrated kitchen knife from the home's utensil drawer, leaving bloody fingerprints that would later seal his fate. Serval first confronted Nick Rice, who awoke to footsteps and a shadowy figure in the dim light. In a blur of fury, Serval bludgeoned Rice over the head with a crowbar he'd grabbed from a toolbox. Deep laceration requiring 12 stitches and leaving Rice with a fractured orbital bone. As Rice managed to stumble toward the back door screaming for help, Serval turned his full rage on the young woman who had dared to leave him. Allie had rushed from her room in a panic, clad in oversized pajamas and clutching her phone mid-dial to 911. What followed was a savage, prolonged assault lasting an estimated 3 to 5 minutes. Jason Serval stabbed Alice Abbott 99 times. The autopsy detailed the incomprehensible brutality. 47 wounds penetrated her torso, piercing her lungs and liver. 22 defensive slashes on her arms showed her desperate attempts to block the relentless attack, and 15 deep gashes on her neck severed vital arteries. Blood spatter patterns reconstructed a chaotic struggle. Allie had backed into the hallway, knocking over furniture before collapsing near the front door in a final, desperate bid to escape. After this unimaginable act of violence, Serval, covered in Allie's blood, paused only briefly to wipe the knife on a dish towel before fleeing into the adjacent woods, abandoning his vehicle with the engine still running. Nick Rice, despite his serious injuries, managed to pound on a neighbor's door at 5:28 a.m., gasping, "Call 911, Allie's hurt bad." Somerset County Sheriff's deputies and Skowhegan police arrived within 8 minutes. They found Allie unresponsive in a pool of blood, her phone shattered beside her with a partial 911 call timestamped 5:24 a.m. Her faint plea captured, "Jason, help, he's here." Paramedics pronounced Alice Abbott dead at the scene at 5:42 a.m. after futile CPR attempts. The investigation was swift and meticulous. By 6:15 a.m., a perimeter was established with K9 units tracking Serval's scent. Crime scene technicians photographed over 200 bloodstains, collected the knife with Serval's prints and Allie's DNA, recovered the bloodied crowbar, and retrieved Allie's phone. The manhunt continued until 9:47 a.m., when a hiker spotted Serval emerging from the undergrowth, disheveled and shoeless, his hands still flecked with dried blood. He surrendered without resistance, murmuring, "I lost control. She was leaving me." This case exists within a deeply troubling, broader context. Somerset County exemplifies what experts call the rural paradox. Lower reported domestic violence rates due to chronic underreporting, but significantly higher lethality when incidents do occur. Intimate partner homicides in Maine rose 18% from 2020 to 2023, with nearly half of all homicides tied directly to abusive relationships. In 2022 specifically, 17 of Maine's 31 homicides stemmed from domestic abuse. Rural areas like Skowhegan face acute barriers. Limited shelter beds. Somerset County has just one 12-bed facility for 50,000 people. Sparse public transit for escape, and cultural stigmas around airing family laundry in tight-knit communities. Experts attribute this deadly pattern to coercive isolation, where abusers exploit geographic distance to monitor victims through unannounced visits, exactly as Serval did. Allie's murder spurred a July 2022 candlelight vigil drawing 300 mourners, where locals created a memorial mural, "Allie Forever, End the Silence," that still stands today. But as devastating as Allie's murder was, the story was far from over. The justice system's handling of Jason Serval would lead to an eruption of violence that would shock the nation. Justice delayed, tensions rising. The legal journey from Jason Serval's arrest on that blood-soaked July morning to his eventual sentencing would span nearly 2 years, a period characterized by methodical progression through Maine's criminal justice system and an undercurrent of barely contained rage from a family desperate for justice. Serval's first court appearance occurred on July 18, 2022, just 2 days after the murder, via video link from Somerset County Jail to Skowhegan District Court before Judge James Martimucci. Appearing in a rumpled orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed behind his back, Serval was represented by court-appointed public defender William Bagdasarian. He entered an initial plea of not guilty to murder, Class A felony, punishable by 25 years to life, and aggravated assault, Class B felony, for the attack on Nick Rice. The 20-minute hearing, attended by Abbott family members in the gallery, centered on bail. Prosecutors argued forcefully for detention without bail, citing Serval's out-of-state ties, flight risk, evidenced by his woodland evasion, and the crime's premeditated nature demonstrated by his overnight drive from Boston. Defense attorney Bagdasarian countered with arguments about Serval's youth, lack of prior criminal record, and family support in Massachusetts. But Judge Martimucci denied bail, citing clear and convincing evidence of danger to the community. Media reports noted Serval's subdued demeanor, observers hearing him mumble, "I'm sorry," as the video feed cut. The preliminary hearing on August 15, 2022, marked the first substantive airing of evidence, held in the same Skowhegan courtroom with about 15 spectators, including Allie's mother clutching her daughter's photo. The 2-hour hearing featured testimony from lead investigator Detective Sergeant Elena Vasquez of Maine State Police. She methodically detailed Serval's voluntary confession after waiving Miranda rights, with no coercion noted. She walked through the physical evidence, the knife's DNA swabs, Rice's bloodied crowbar, and Serval's hoodie fibers matching scene debris. Nick Rice himself appeared, still recovering from his orbital fracture and wearing visible bandages. His voice cracked as he recounted, "I heard glass break, then her scream." Judge Martimucci found probable cause and transferred the case to Somerset Superior Court. A grand jury comprising 16 Somerset residents formally indicted Serval on September 12, 2022, reviewing sealed exhibits including autopsy photos and Serval's 911 call transcript. They returned a true bill on both counts without dissent. Throughout late 2022 and early 2023, the defense filed several motions focused on mitigation rather than contesting guilt. On November 28, 2022, Bagdasarian filed a motion to suppress Serval's confession, arguing that fatigue from his all-night drive had impaired his ability to knowingly waive his Miranda rights. The 45-page brief cited Serval's 3 a.m. departure from Boston and blood alcohol traces, 0.02% from a pre-drive beer, as evidence of compromised mental state. Prosecutors countered with body camera footage showing Serval's lucidity. "I know what I did. Ask me anything." A suppression hearing held February 14, 2023, in Fairfield Superior Court spanned 3 days, featuring expert testimony from forensic psychologist Dr. Laura Hensley for the prosecution, who affirmed no cognitive impairment affecting Serval's rights comprehension. The defense countered with Dr. Marcus Hale, who opined on post-arrest suggestibility from isolation and shock. On March 10, 2023, Justice David Griffiths denied the motion in a 15-page order, ruling the Miranda waiver knowing, intelligent, and voluntary. Concurrently, the defense requested a competency evaluation triggered by jail reports of Serval experiencing withdrawn episodes and nightmares. Court-appointed psychiatrist Dr. Evelyn Torres conducted 2 evaluation sessions on February 28 and March 7, 2023, using established assessment tools. Her 25-page report, filed April 5, 2023, deemed Serval competent to proceed. He understood the charges. "I killed her in a rage," comprehended courtroom roles, "prosecutor wants me locked up, my lawyer fights for me," and grasped consequences, life in prison, no early release, scoring 18 out of 22 on factual awareness despite mild depressive traits and impulse control deficits. As the case moved toward resolution, plea negotiations intensified beginning mid-2023. By July 2023, marking the 1-year anniversary of Allie's murder, prosecutors offered a deal capping Serval's potential life exposure at 45 years, contingent on guilty pleas to both counts and complete waiver of any conviction appeal. Defense attorney Bagdasarian had to weigh this carefully. The evidence was damning: a full confession, ironclad forensics, and 99 stab wounds virtually guaranteed conviction, with internal defense memos estimating roughly 90% odds of guilty verdicts. But plea negotiations weren't happening in a vacuum. The Abbott family, working through a victim advocate liaison, submitted pre-plea letters urging no leniency. Allie's brother Clifford Warren penned a particularly powerful letter. 45 years mocks her 20 stolen ones. Conversely, Serval's mother, flying from Boston quarterly, advocated desperately for mental health concessions sessions, citing her son's good kid upbringing marred by an absent father and untreated psychological issues. After 3 deadlocked conferences on August 15th, October 10th, and December 5th, 2023, a breakthrough came January 10th, 2024. Serval authorized the plea deal, motivated partly by an updated evaluation from Dr. Torres, noting his evolving remorse through jail therapy, 12 sessions of cognitive behavioral counseling. The change of plea hearing on January 17, 2024, before Justice Robert Mullen, was almost anticlimactic. Serval, now 21 and noticeably leaner from incarceration, allocuted under oath, "I stabbed Allie 99 times after breaking into her home, intending to harm her," with Justice Mullen carefully probing voluntariness. No promises beyond this deal. The guilty pleas were accepted, dismissing lesser counts, with sentencing initially set for March 15th before being delayed to April 12th for a comprehensive pre-sentence investigation. This resolution spared both families the prolonged trauma of a full trial, but as Assistant District Attorney Justin Nadeau reflected, plea deals honor truth without prolonging pain, yet justice demands the maximum for such savagery. The stage was now set for what everyone assumed would be a routine, if emotionally charged, sentencing hearing. No one, not prosecutors, defense attorneys, court security, or Justice Mullen himself, could have predicted the explosive violence that would erupt. The pre-sentencing atmosphere in Skowhegan was electric with tension. The Abbott family had waited nearly 2 years for this moment. 2 years of grief counseling, sleepless nights, and agonizing attempts to rebuild shattered lives while knowing Allie's killer still breathed, ate, and existed in a jail cell while their daughter lay cold in the ground. For them, 45 years felt simultaneously like an eternity and nowhere near enough time to balance the scales for the 99 stab wounds that stole Allie's future. What would unfold on April 12, 2024, would transform a solemn legal proceeding into a scene of absolute chaos that would be captured on camera and viewed millions of times around the world. When the gavel falls, chaos erupts. April 12, 2024 began like any other sentencing day at Somerset County Superior Court, a compact 2-story brick building on Court Street in Skowhegan, overlooking the Kennebec River. But this Friday morning would end in a way no one present would ever forget, captured on courtroom security cameras and destined to become one of the most viral pieces of legal footage in recent memory. The hearing began at 9:15 a.m. when Jason Serval entered the courtroom in standard-issue orange Somerset County jail jumpsuit, leg irons clanking softly against the linoleum floor, his once athletic frame noticeably thinned by 20 months of incarceration. The session was presided over by Superior Court Chief Justice Robert Mullen, a 68-year-old veteran jurist with over 30 years on the bench, known for his measured demeanor and emphasis on victim-centered processes. The courtroom adhered to Maine's standard protocols, a rectangular chamber with varnished pew-like benches divided by a 4-foot wooden bar, the symbolic divide between public gallery and legal proceedings. The Abbott family, roughly a dozen strong, including parents, Alice Sr. and David, siblings, and extended family, occupied the front row. Dressed in somber blacks and grays, many clutched tissues or photos of the vibrant, smiling 20-year-old Allie, creating a visual memorial that amplified their presence and loss. Security was robust, yet relatively unobtrusive. 2 Somerset County sheriff's deputies, a Maine State Police trooper, 2 court marshals, and crucially, a single corrections officer, Mark Reynolds, a 15-year veteran, positioned near Serval, equipped with handcuffs, baton, and taser. Notably, there were no metal detectors for this non-trial session. The emotional heart of the hearing came during victim impact statements, a statutory right under Maine's Victims' Rights Act, allocating 45 minutes for Abbott family members to address the court from a podium just feet from where Serval sat. 4 family members spoke, their voices raw with 2 years of accumulated grief and rage, each concluding with passionate pleas for life imprisonment, exceeding the 45-year plea bargain cap. But it was Clifford C.J. Warren's testimony that would prove to be the powder keg. A U.S. Army veteran whose own PTSD had resurfaced after his sister's murder, Warren delivered a 10-minute statement standing rigidly, fists clenched, voice cracking with barely controlled emotion. "My wife has been forced to carry the immense burden of a distracted and disheartened husband," Warren testified, "and my son has had the disadvantage of an impatient father who can't be fully present because part of him died with his sister." He described indelible scars. "A piece of my consciousness is always with Allie, agonizing over images that will never leave me. From the blood-stained walls to the bruised and battered body I said my final goodbyes to. I can't unsee the horror Jason Serval brought down on my family." He implored Justice Mullen directly, voice rising. 45 years? That's a slap in the face to my sister's memory. Give him life. Let him rot, knowing every day what he stole from us." The gallery murmured agreement as a deputy subtly adjusted his stance. After additional statements from Warren's wife Emily and mother Alice Sr., the proceeding moved into its final phase. At 11:15 a.m., Justice Mullen commenced his sentencing analysis, establishing a basic sentence of 45 years for murder, citing the premeditated entry and 99 wounds inflicted, which evince depravity that shocks the conscience. Weighing aggravating versus mitigating factors, Mullen acknowledged the viciousness of the stabbing frenzy, the subjective victim impact in the family's irreparable shatter, and public protection needs given Serval's documented volatility. In a rare judicial gesture, he read aloud from Allie's obituary: "Beloved daughter, adventurer whose smile conquered storms, taken too soon." He called it very moving, explaining he was reading it to honor the victim as a person, not merely a statistic. Balancing these against mitigating circumstances, Serval's clean record, age 20, when the brain is not fully formed, his guilty plea showing responsibility, genuine remorse, and mental health struggles. Justice Mullen concluded at 11:25 a.m.
I believe the family and friends of this poor young girl need closure, and I'm convinced that the sentence I'm imposing today is lawful and will survive any appeal if one is filed.
The aggravating and mitigating factors hold relatively even, no deviation warranted. His gavel struck with finality: 45 years incarceration on murder, concurrent 10 years for assault, plus $2,320 restitution. The gallery exhaled sharply, sounding almost like defeat from the Abbott section. And then, in mere seconds, everything exploded. As defense attorney Jeremy Pratt rose for a sidebar about paperwork, Clifford Warren, eyes blazing with 2 years of pent-up rage, suddenly vaulted over the wooden bar. At precisely 11:26 a.m., Warren launched himself down the central aisle with a guttural roar.
Kill that little bitch! He deserves to die! He deserves to die! You black nigga, you deserve to die! You deserve to die!
The epithets echoed off the vaulted ceiling, freezing everyone momentarily. Warren's charge was unhesitating, covering the 10-foot span in 3 bounding steps, arms pistoning forward as if to physically seize justice the legal system had failed to deliver. His face flushed crimson, mouth contorted in pure rage as he charged toward the defense table. A wooden chair toppled sideways with a harsh clatter, legs splaying across the floor. A water pitcher spilled in a cascade onto the prosecutor's binder. Serval recoiled instinctively, his chair skidding backward, arms snapping up in defensive shield, elbows tucked, forearms crossed, eyes widening in genuine, unguarded terror. But interception came with practiced precision. Corrections Officer Mark Reynolds launched from his position and closed the gap in a fluid tackle, intercepting Warren mid-stride just shy of the defense table. Reynolds' arms encircled Warren's midsection in a textbook clinch, driving him downward onto the carpet with a muffled thud. His knee pinned Warren's thigh, while his free hand radioed code 1032, disturbance, front well. Warren thrashed violently, legs kicking spasmodically, one boot glancing off the chair, sending it skittering, his free arm flailing towards Serval's vicinity, fingers clawing air inches from the table's edge. But Reynolds' leverage neutralized the attack, Warren's shouts devolving into incoherent snarls. Then came the taser. With Warren still fighting, Reynolds drew his Taser X26P, a compact yellow device, and, following protocol for imminent threat to personnel, fired a single cartridge point blank into Warren's upper back. The 50,000-volt discharge crackled audibly, a sharp electronic whip snap silencing the room's roar. Warren's body arched rigidly, limbs splaying in convulsive spasms as the 5-second cycle coursed through him, violent kicks subsiding into tremors, chest heaving with labored grunts. Warren's eruption triggered a contagion effect in the gallery, transforming an isolated outburst into a surging wave. As Warren hit the deck, 2 to 3 Abbott relatives vaulted to their feet. Alice Sr., Allie's mother, half-stepped forward, fists balled, hurling her own condemnation. "Die! You deserve to die!" Her voice cracking, a maternal dirge laced with 2 years of deferred vengeance. Beside her, an aunt mirrored the advance, pointing accusatory fingers towards Serval, while an uncle leaned aggressively over the railing, his bellow blending into the cacophony. No family members actually crossed the bar. Its 4-foot height contained them, but their collective press forward, arms outstretched, forced circulating Deputy Kara Ellis to physically interpose herself, palm firm on the aunt's shoulder. "Back to your seats. Now!" From the elevated bench, Justice Mullen surged to his feet, robe swirling. His gavel descended in a staccato trio, wood on wood resounding like rifle cracks, overlaid with his amplified command. "Order! Order in this court. Bailiff, restrain them. Clear the gallery if necessary." The stenographer froze mid-keystroke, instinctively shielding her notes. Within 90 seconds, order was restored. Reynolds holstered the spent taser cartridge and applied double-locked handcuffs to Warren's wrists, rolling him face down while murmuring Miranda warnings. "You're under arrest for assault and contempt. Stop resisting." Warren, dazed and wheezing, offered no further violence.
"I know no matter how sorry I am or however many times I apologize, I'll never ease the pain. I can't imagine the pain and grief I put you through."
Serval gave his own statement, apologizing to the Abbott family for the heinous crime he committed. However, they had made it clear that no apology, no remorse, and no prison sentence can ever restore what was stolen. All they wished for him was a death sentence. At 11:28 a.m., Justice Mullen adjourned. This court stands in recess. We will reconvene remotely at 2 p.m. via secure video link. No spectators permitted. This emergency halt bought 2.5 hours for emotions to cool and the courthouse to restore order. The aftermath would reverberate for months. Clifford Warren was booked on charges of assault, criminal trespass, and contempt, though prosecutors ultimately exercised mercy. By September 2024, after victims' rights advocacy arguing prosecuting CJ is prosecuting Allie's pain, charges were resolved through deferred disposition, essentially probation with no permanent conviction, requiring 100 hours community service at a domestic violence shelter and anger management counseling. More significantly, defense attorneys seized on the brawl as appeal grounds, arguing the hostile atmosphere, including what they characterized as racially charged epithets directed at biracial Serval, had tainted the proceeding and violated his due process rights. On August 7, 2025, over a year after the violent scene, Maine's Supreme Judicial Court sided with the defense in a 4-1 ruling, vacating Serval's 45-year sentence and ordering a new sentencing hearing. The court found Justice Mullen had erred in his sentencing analysis, with the brawl noted as evidence of sentencing volatility warranting careful reconsideration. As of October 2025, Jason Serval awaits resentencing, scheduled for early November, with enhanced security measures. The Abbott family continues advocating for maximum sentencing while working through the Allie's Light Foundation they established to support other domestic violence victims in rural Maine. The courtroom has been retrofitted with reinforced barriers and enhanced security protocols, changes that came too late for that April day when grief, rage, and justice collided explosively. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.